And what we do with these webinars, it's pro bono. So the guests that come on it are not paid for. These guests are not, they're giving of their time. And all you're giving really relative to this is your 60 to 90 minutes to spend some time with us. And our intention here is really to close the circle, because if you take a look at who we are as a business, so we obviously have the rebounding, we've got, all the accessories and the equipment and all of that. And then we've got Body Kind and athleisure. And then this kind of falls to us under the LR brand, and that's mindful living. And if you had to take a look at the business, it's kind of what you do with your body, that's Bounty. What do you put on your body? That's Body Kind. And then what do you put inside your body, or understanding your body better? And that's LR. And so what we try to share here with special guests is the stuff. I think it's a whole theme is actually demystification, because I love that word. It's demystifying, deciphering things that we speak about in passing. We talk about them, but we don't really truly comprehend them. And this evening is one of those evenings again. And the theme, like we push this out, is gut health. I think the microbiome is one of those things that's, it's misunderstood. It's misunderstood. It's misrepresented.
We know it's important, but we don't know why it's important. We just know, your gut's really important. Yes.
But when I did some research, we've done one like this before, but we
really have. About a year and a half ago, we actually did one on guts. But we have so many new clients now, and so many people that maybe didn't, attend that one. So we just thought, because it is so important, some of the subjects that we are going to kind of bring up, we're going to redo again. We're actually going to repeat the entire thing, but in a different way, with different guests, and we'll take a different angle. And what's so beautiful about the health and wellness industry is that it's forever changing, it's evolving, it's progressing. There's science, there's data, there's technology. And so to actually do one a year, one every 2 years is actually not enough. We actually need to talk about it often and bring forward like all the new developments that are happening in this space. I love the industry because of this, because you have to stay on your toes. It's forever changing. And luckily now science is there to assist us and enable us even more. So it's just one of those subjects that has to be brought up at least once a year.
So what I did was, because the scientists, I went to ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT all about the microbiome. And I told it, okay, not like when you go to Google, you ask what's the microbiome, etc. But when you can have a conversation with an AI and you start asking it, okay, so what is this thing called the microbiome? And what I did was I asked it, give me like incredible, like insane facts about it. And wow, it spat out some really, really interesting. The first one was that infants that are born naturally through vaginal birth and infants that are born through C-section, cesarean births, have completely different microbiomes, which I found like mind-blowing. The second one that I also found mind-blowing is one that we repeated in the first one, but every time I tell it to people, and ChatGPT really unpacked it for me, was that we are less human cells than we are microbiome cells. So the bacteria that lives and constitutes you is actually more bacteria than you. So each human being walking around there is actually less human than bacterial. And that I find absolutely fascinating. That, we've got, and microbiomes live in various areas in our bodies. We've got microbiomes in our mouths, we've got microbiomes in our genitals, we've got microbiomes in our gut, we've got microbiomes in our ears. And that's fascinating. And that this is actually your brain. And ChatGPT told me, well, no, ChatGPT actually changed it and said that in certain circumstances, people actually believe that this influences your brain more so than your brain has an influence on your body. And especially with things like mood. So your mood as one big one it picked up. And another thing that I thought was very, very topical is that your microbiome is pivotal when it comes to weight loss. Like it's not your brain saying train more and getting those good, happy hormones. If your biome is out of kilter, you won't lose weight. And then another one, or feel great. And another one was nutrition absorption. If your biome's off, etc., you can be taking all the right things, eating all the right things, but you're not getting better because your nutrient intake is affected by the fact that your microbiome's weak. So
I think we've all actually been, can say that at some point in our last 5 years, we've been super, super moody because we haven't actually been to the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the stuff that you talk about that makes me very uncomfortable.
No, so for me, this is a subject that I'm very comfortable to speak about, even at the dinner table. Steph goes, oh, here we go again. But I'm not, I don't think of it as taboo at all. And the minute I start opening up this sort of can and we start talking about it naturally, people are so engaging with the subject, because just generally people don't talk about it. And I've noticed it. For the last 15 years, I've been consulting with clients about their gut and making the conversation easy. With men, it's not so easy. I must be honest. I've had many consults over the years where we start talking about poop and looking down and what it looks like, and can you describe it to me? And just really, it is one of the worst moments in a consultation, not for myself, but for the human being. It's just, is she really talking about this? She's really asking these questions, but it's so important to bring it up. But my whole point was, even youngsters, they're starting with their sort of the shyness and the tabooness from ages of 4 and 5, and from grade 1. They don't want to go to the toilet at school, but the minute you open that door and they come rushing in at home, it's like, Mom, I need to run to the bathroom. I've been holding it in all day. I didn't want to go at school because I didn't want people to hear or smell or whatever. Like people, it's just become this thing with the youth. And then teenagers even more so. And then what happens, you go to university and then you go into the workplace, and there's a lot of sort of unisex bathrooms now, which is for me is just so strange. But also just, the ladies just don't, it's almost like something mentally turns off the minute you are in a public environment. Even when you're dating somebody and you go away for a long weekend, how many women I've consulted with over the years where they, go to the loo regularly on the Friday morning, and then they do not visit the bathroom again until Sunday night or Monday morning when they return back home and they feel comfortable. They're back in their bathroom again, and the first thing they do is go to the bathroom, and they haven't been to the loo for 2 to 3 days because they can't. Mentally and emotionally, they've just put a massive block on that. And what people don't realize is that if you don't go to the loo like every single day, at a minimum once a day, ideally that the perfect colon is once every 8 waking hours. That means that you should be going 2 to 3 times in a 24-hour cycle. There are a handful of people I've met in my life that I can say have this kind of, behavior, colon behavior. And most other ladies that I consult with, it's every 2 days, once a week. I've had many ladies come in once every 2 to 4 weeks, generally over that time of the month when there's a lot of hormones at play, and then they actually go to the loo. And you would think this human being is going to be like really overweight, right? But they are often very skinny, but they look gray, like their eyes are sunken in, they've got big rings under their eyes, and they're gray looking because they're actually so toxic. All that, if you think about in a typical day, eating 3 meals, let's say, and maybe 2 small snacks over a course of 7 days, that's 35 meals that is going into your colon and is not being eliminated. And how much toxic waste should have exited your body, and it's just being reabsorbed into your colon and into your lymphatic system, into your bloodstream, making you acidic, making you sick, making you moody and toxic. I mean, it's just so concerning. And it starts from a very young age, these little behavioral habits that especially girls, boys, it's like, whatever. And it's this thing with girls that we princesses, you don't do that, you don't say that, you don't like to behave like that, we definitely don't talk about it. And it's so scary. I've had to really educate Bellaboo around this and try and normalize it for her and try and get her to talk about it with her friends and try and encourage her friends that if you need to go, let's go. I'll hold your hand. I'll take you to the bathroom. Do not hold it in, because what happens is you get really sick. And trying to make her pioneer this little kind of movements, excuse the pun, in her little classroom. But for 15 years of me consulting with the subject, it blows my mind how many people suffer from some colon dysfunction or some kind of digestive disorder, from a mild one through to the most chronic ones you've ever heard of. And just recently in my life, I have somebody that's close to me that has at the moment got like stage 2 colon, like a cyst in their colon, and that's really sad to hear. But my brother, it was 2 months ago, got a phone call from my mom in the middle of the morning. She kept ringing, and I was on a Zoom call. Eventually I answered the phone, and it was her. And she said, my darling, like, Jay's in the hospital, he's got a perforated colon. It was this huge drama in our family. I almost lost my brother. Never had any colon issues ever before in his life, but it had been this deterioration over years of stress, ignoring signs and symptoms, Vaping was like a problem, kind of like little ulcers in his colon that he didn't even know existed. And eventually what happened is that it perforated his colon in 2 spots. And he had literally pus and feces all around his organs. And he was, he went into emergency surgery. They cut him open literally in half, took out a huge portion of his bowel, had to put a colon bag in, and they had to wait and see if he was going to pull through the septicemia and all of that. It was really quite scary, and he's younger than my brother, and this came out the blue. So, when I started explaining, the gut to him, and also it was just, people know so little about the gut. So before I get into some stuff that I feel really works for me and for our clients and things that I take every day, I do want Carly to kind of set the record straight, because if you look at Carly, she is a dietitian, she's a food doctor, and she sees this kind of thing every day. And I mean, we do DNA with our patients every day, all day. And a big factor is I want to sort out my gut. I want to figure out what is making my gut bloated, or what is making me, get IBS, or, whatever it is. I want to sort out my gut. And Carly is an expert with all things gut. So I thought it's important that she goes first, and then I'll talk a little bit about what's helped me before we get on Megan, our guest tonight.
Okay, just before we go over to Carly, first of all, I just want to shout out to Biogen. Biogen's made all of these webinars. This webinar, particularly this series, possible tonight. So big shout out to the guys at Discim and Biogen specifically. And what I'm going to do is there's some supplements from a probiotic and gut health perspective. We'll push out a 20% discount code little later on. I'll put it into the chat. I think that's important. But just as we bridge over to Carly, one of the things that I read about tonight or this afternoon when I was chatting to ChatGPT is I didn't know that this existed. It's called FMT, which is fecal microbiota transplants, where you can actually take someone else's poop that's stored in a fecal bank and then get that installed into you. And essentially that is taking someone's healthy microbiome and transplanting that into your body, and to cultivate and culture your new microbiome in you, which is it's incredible. Yeah. And it's a horrible thing to think about, but the fact that it's possible. This has been going on for about a decade, so it's actually not a new thing. And I find it also incredibly fascinating how they can take men and women that cannot lose weight. So they've got something very wrong with their gut biome. They do everything right. They're eating the right things. They're supplementing appropriately. They're managing stress levels. They're doing everything right, but their gut biome is broken. And it could have been from many, many years of stress. It could have been from taking many series of antibiotics and destroying their gut biome over years. And so they can't lose weight. So what they do is actually take the fecal donation matter from somebody who's slim, who's got a great metabolism, great gut biome, and they take a piece of the feces and they obviously do the whole fecal transplant. And this human being, it starts to populate with the good bacteria, and things start changing within them, and they start to lose weight because they couldn't before. Their gut was broken. But the gut is linked to weight loss. It's linked to mood and emotion. It's linked to immunity. It's linked to everything. So before I get into anything more, let's hand over to the expert herself, to Carly. Over to you, Carly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lise. Always such a kind introduction. You speak so kindly, but I don't know if I'm a gut expert, but I work with it every single day. Evening, everyone. So glad to have you here and listen to definitely my favorite topic in nutrition. Whenever I ask clients about their gut health or about what's going on with their gut, I get excited. I don't get embarrassed or shy at all. I think it's so interesting because it tells me so much about what's going on in that client's general health and well-being. So even this picture to start, it's like a little gut detective, and that's what I like to think myself as sometimes, because it's just so important to really dig deep and understand what's going on in the gut. And the reason why I love working with the gut and improving overall gut health is because I really do think that improving gut health makes the biggest difference to a patient's overall well-being, their overall quality of life, their happiness, their general health. So it's highly rewarding when we see these amazing improvements in gut health. So just to go over the definition of what actually is good gut health, it's not just absence of disease in the gut. It's not just not having stomach cramps or not having a runny tummy. The definition really is compromised of having good digestion and breakdown of food, the optimal absorption of nutrients, a balanced, diverse, abundant microbiome, which we'll chat a bit more about in a little bit, a healthy immune system function, digestive comfort, and smooth, regular bowel movements. So the entire gastrointestinal tract is involved in gut health. So it's not just your intestines, it's not just your colon and your small intestine and your stomach. It really does run all the way from your mouth all the way down to the bottom. It's a huge amount of tissue, it's a huge amount of cells, and it really does play a massive function in our overall health. So some of the gut disorders I often see in practice and that I often treat and that I can treat and help manage and treat. IBS, I think this is largely misunderstood. It can be classed into IBS constipation, IBS diarrhea, or IBS mixed. So mixed patterning between the constipation and the diarrhea. And IBS isn't really a diagnosis, to be honest with you. It's just a name that the medical profession has come up for a group of symptoms. It's not really getting to the root cause of the condition. So saying I've got IBS, that's not getting to what's causing your symptoms. It's just a name for a grouping of symptoms. So with IBS, I often like to do a little bit more digging, and figure out where's this coming from and how do we actually get to the root cause of treating it. Inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I actually had a patient recently who I've been working with, which has been amazing and so rewarding. She has ulcerative colitis. She might be on the call, I don't know. But she was really, really suffering. Energy levels terrible, couldn't get out of bed, didn't have the energy to exercise, was putting on weight despite hardly eating anything. She was only going to the bathroom once every 10 days, give or take, maybe once every week if she was lucky. So when Lisa's saying women only go to the bathroom once every week, once every 2 weeks, she's not fibbing. It really is the case. So of course, just not feeling great. Anyway, I decided to look deeper and do some blood tests with her. Unfortunately, her doctor hadn't referred her to a dietitian, which unfortunately happens more often than not. We can make such a big difference in the patient's life. But anyway, I did more blood tests with this patient and I came to find that she was severely deficient in iron, vitamin B12, vitamin D. And if we think about just basic biology and we look at where these nutrients absorb, they're absorbed in your small intestine and they're absorbed in your gut wall. If your gut wall is inflamed and if there's little ulcers and if there's little painful spots there, of course, you're not going to absorb your nutrition properly. So anyway, I worked on really healing her gut lining, certain supplements and nutrients we use there, very specific eating plan and diet, correcting the deficiencies. And literally within a week or two, she was going to the bathroom every day. Her bloating had come down. She lost 4 kilos. She was just a different person. And it's so amazing when you can really treat the body as a whole, as opposed to just chucking a chronic medication at the problem. Celiac disease, autoimmune disease, there we see that quite often. Reflux, indigestion, heartburn. I had a patient the other day tell me that when he's sleeping, this is a little bit gross, but he actually has a little bit of bile and acid that comes up and he can taste it. Like that happens more often than you think. Gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach lining. GIT ulcers, which could be in the stomach lining or the duodenum or the small intestine. Diverticulitis, general gut discomfort, bloating, nausea. We see this quite often as well. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So this is an interesting one that's very misunderstood in the general medical community and in South Africa. There actually aren't a lot of gastros who test for SIBO, but I think it's so common. And I actually believe this to be the root cause of a lot of the IBS cases. And SIBO is when there's inappropriate growth of bacteria in your small intestine. Our microbiome and our good bacteria should actually be living in the large intestine, not in the small intestine. So with abdominal surgery or C-section or frequent antibiotic use, that bacteria can sometimes migrate up into the small intestine and start causing issues. So that's an important one. And then food intolerances and sensitivities. So just be mindful, these are not allergies. Your immune system is not activated, but food intolerances and sensitivities are things that we can pick up in a DNA health test. We specifically look there at lactose, gluten, caffeine. Other ones that I often see and treat also include soy and fructose. So some individuals struggle with the type of sugar that's in fruit, and it causes a massive runny tummy for them. And then histamine and there's histamine in several foods like rich cheeses and certain meats and other foods that can also cause gastrointestinal issues. So it's very complicated, and I think it's just so important to seek medical help if you are diagnosed with any of those, and if you haven't seen a dietitian, please do so. So the importance of the gut, why do we talk about it so much? Why is it so important? And how do I see it connecting to other areas of my patient's life that they would never even understand? It really is central to the rest of our health. And I think that we can even just look at it basically. Your gut is central to the rest of your body. Your gut is central to the rest of your health. And I find that, well, I don't find, it is evidence that poor gut health really can increase systemic inflammation throughout the rest of your body. So having a chronically upset, imbalanced gut can increase the risk of joint pain, autoimmune disease risk. We often say that rheumatoid arthritis starts in the gut. It starts with an unhappy gut. It increases the risk of all of your metabolic chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, cancers, Alzheimer's. It plays a massive role in weight management and the ability to successfully lose weight. Huge role in mental health and mood, because, and a lot of people are often surprised by this, but actually 90% of serotonin is made within your gastrointestinal tract. So that gut-brain connection is vitally important, and I think often overlooked as well. GABA, which is also really important, calming neurotransmitter, is also synthesized in the gut. So your gut and your brain talking to each other all the time is something we can't neglect when we're looking at anxiety or depression. Of course, it's the place where food is absorbed, especially things like vitamin B12 and iron, nutrients that play such an important role in your energy levels and how you're feeling day to day. And some of these deficiencies, if they are left unchecked and if they are not treated timeously, can really be life-threatening, especially your B vitamins. They can cause long-term damage to your nervous system. So we have to be mindful of that. Skin health is very closely linked to gut health as well. So as Steph mentioned earlier, our microbiome, we don't only have a gut microbiome, we also have a skin microbiome. So the bacteria within our gut is communicating with the bacteria on our skin, and an unhappy gut is often the root cause, or it's linked to eczema, psoriasis, follicular hyperkeratosis. So you know those little frog skin bumps or chicken skin bumps that people often get on the upper arms or upper thighs, that can actually in a lot of cases be linked to a deficiency of either omega-3 or vitamin A, or it can also be linked to a gluten intolerance. So our skin does give us a really good indication of what's going on in the gut. It's linked to immune system function. So I know there's this horrible influenza going around at the moment. Having a healthy gut is really going to help you fight that off, because 75% of the immune cells are located in the gut. So direct link there. And then a new area of research that we're looking at is the hormone balance and the connection between hormone balance and gut. So what we're finding now, this is fascinating, is very new research, but the gut microbiome plays a vital role in actually metabolizing and detoxifying the potentially harmful forms of estrogen, which if accumulate in your body can increase the risk of breast cancer. So your gut's involved in balancing hormones. And then of course it's involved in detoxification. So when we talk about detox, and we often talk about this in DNA health, I always say, let's start with the third and final phase of detoxification, which is your bowel movements. If you're not eliminating, your colon and your gut wall is so permeable, which means that it's able to actually absorb all the waste, all the trash that's sitting in there. That waste then gets recycled all the way back up to phase 1 of the liver detox and has to start this process again. So as Lisa mentioned, that gray, really fatigued, really tired, really sore, not losing weight, it can often be a result of this. So yeah, I hope that highlights how important the gut is. I think we could go on and on, but it really is critical. And then what I wanted to do today is a little bit more of a practical gut assessment. Okay, so these are some of the questions that I would go through in a consult with patients, and you can just mentally check yes or no's to these questions. And I think why I'm bringing it up in this webinar tonight is, like Lisa said, people are so shy and so scared to talk about this topic. And when I ask a patient, how's your gut health? They often don't know what's normal, what's not normal, what's dangerous, what's not dangerous. They only know what's normal for them. They only know what's relative to them. So I want to just unpack some of that. So do you frequently experience abdominal pain, cramps, gas, and or bloating after meals, indigestion or acid reflux, or heartburn as we often call it, loose watery stools, hard small stools, mucus or blood in the stool, irregular bowel movements, so less than once per day that you're actually going to the bathroom for a number 2, straining or pain when you're going to the bathroom, nausea or unexplained queasiness, and then do you rely on laxatives to have a bowel movement? So this is an important one that's often overlooked as well. People say, yeah, I'm going to the loo every day, but then we dig deep and we find out that they're taking a Senokot or they're taking something to actually stimulate that bowel movement. So that's not a natural movement, and we have to be cognizant of that. And then do you feel like your bowel movements are incomplete? So this is a very, very important one. When you go to the loo and you feel like it's not all out, that's an important one. We have to be mindful of that. So I think if you have answered yes to any of the above questions, especially if there's like 3 or more of these questions that are coming up as really bothersome for you, please do seek medical advice. Don't ignore your gut. It's just so, so important. And I think something else I wanted to touch on here, because I see a lot of patients over 40, over 50, and I say, when was your last colonoscopy? When was your last gastroscopy? So those are basically scopes. Upward scopes, backward scopes, downward scopes, so important. These are actually routine and recommended after the age of 40, 45. So if you are over 40, 45, or you have a strong family history of cancer, colon cancer, please go and do it. They're not that bad anymore. You're completely out. You don't even know what's going on, and they really can be hugely, hugely life-saving. Okay, favorite slide of the night, the Bristol stool chart. So this is a little bit gross for some people, but it's so important to have a look at the different types of stool that we see, and to look down in your toilet bowl and know where you're at on the scale most of the time. Sometimes it's normal to have a little bit of an upset tummy. Maybe you ate something that was a bit off. Maybe you're really, really stressed. That's okay if it's once in a while, but we're talking here majority of the time. So you can see type 1 are these small little like chuckles, basically. That's really severe constipation. Type 2, we're looking at lumpy and sausage-like mild constipation. You could be dehydrated here, not drinking enough water, not getting enough fiber. Type 3, 4, and 5 are normal, but type 4 is really what we're aiming for. Okay, that's smooth, soft sausage or snake is what we're aiming for. That is the ideal bowel movement, and that's what we're wanting to achieve majority of the time. And then when we move, I can see Steph cringing. He hates this. When we move onto the end of the spectrum, we're looking at those soft little blobs, which is mild diarrhea. That is often a sign of inflammation within the gut. If your stools are not properly formed, it's a sign of chronic inflammation. And then when we're looking at type 7, very, very liquidy consistency, severe diarrhea, we really do worry here, because your body will not be absorbing adequate nutrition. And inside your gut lining, you have these tiny little hair-like cells that kind of look like this, and they line your gut. And those are called cilia. And if there's chronic diarrhea, those cells get suppressed, and they are responsible for actually helping with nutrient absorption. So if they're suppressed and flattened, you're just going to be losing all of the beautiful food that you're eating, all of the supplements that you're taking. So we really need to try and get on top of that. So remember this chart, and remember what you're actually looking for in the toilet bowl. And then, as Steph mentioned, the gut microbiome and the gut microbiota, such an interesting field of research. And I often describe it as the ecosystem or rainforest of microorganisms living in your gut. And there are trillions and trillions and trillions. We have about 1 to 2 kilograms of microbial weight in our guts, 1 to 2 kgs. That's a lot. And what we're wanting to look at here is the balance between the good gut bugs and the not so great gut bugs, and the potentially harmful and potentially disease causing and dangerous gut bugs. So what's really important is that your gut microbiome is ever changing. It's not set. You're not born with one gut microbiome and you die with one gut microbiome. It's changing every single day, and it is affected by the food you eat, your stress levels, your lifestyle, your supplementation, whatever, the environment you live in, the air you breathe is going to affect your gut microbiome. So we're just wanting to understand, how do we work with our gut microbiome as opposed to against it? Okay, so just keep your eyes peeled. We are looking at a new test that's coming out, a new gut microbiome test, which might be coming out soon in the next couple of months. So we're super excited. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Okay, and then dysbiosis. So dysbiosis is the name that we give the situation that happens in our guts when there are more strains of bad bacteria than good gut bacteria. And essentially what causes dysbiosis, or what is really, really bad for your gut health, frequent antibiotic use without probiotics. So I think I encourage all of you, especially over this period of the flu season, to just ask your doctor, if they're just giving you one antibiotic script after another, just say, why do I need this? Is it bacterial? Is it viral? Remember, if you've got a viral infection, it can't be treated with antibiotics. You don't want antibiotics to just be prescribed carelessly. You really want to make sure you're taking it really when needed. Our modern lives, unfortunately, unmanaged stress, lack of exercise, poor sleep, that plays a massive role in your gut microbiome and actually encourages the growth of the bad bacteria. High sugar intake, high intake of red meat and processed meat specifically, low fiber intake, consuming more than 2 alcoholic drinks per day can deplete the good gut bacteria, smoking, poor dental hygiene, accidental chemical exposure. So this is not drinking a bottle of gin, but it's really just day-to-day exposure to pesticides and chemicals that might be in your plastic water bottles. So just being mindful of that. And another really big one that's always overlooked is the frequent use of certain medications. So your aspirin, your non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, your Nurofen, your PPIs, your heartburn medications, or your Buscopan, not so bad there actually, but your, what's the word I'm thinking of now? Your Nexium, those medications, your painkillers, they have a massive impact on the gut, and they can really deplete your body's ability to absorb crucial nutrients. So be mindful of that. And then, okay, let's go down to this one. So what do we do about the gut? Okay, it is a hugely individualized treatment protocol that I would put a patient on. It's not a one size fits all, but these are some of the food-based approaches and food-based strategies that I think we can all implement and will make a big difference to our gut health. So the generalized thinking here is more plants, less meat, less sugar, less alcohol, less processed foods. Okay, so more plant diversity and variety in your diet, trying to aim for as many different colors of vegetables on your plate as possible, buying different fruit and veggies at the grocery store, not going for your same old broccoli, same old carrots, but mixing it up, making sure you've got diversity there. Drinking enough water. So I always take this as like a given, think it's a normal thing. Everybody must just know that they must drink enough water, but people don't do it. It's insane. Like I had a patient today and he says he only drinks like 2 glasses, maximum 2 glasses like this of water a day. I said, how are you functioning? No wonder your kidneys are straining. So the requirement here is 30 mils per kilogram of body weight. That's how much water we should be drinking. So let's say you are 70 kilos, you should be on at least 2.1 liters of water before exercise, before what you're losing through sweat. Increasing fiber, so fiber, fruit, veggies, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. Fiber actually helps to encourage the growth of good bacteria. Omega-3s I find are very important. These are an essential fatty acid that we don't get enough of in our diets if you're not eating enough oily fish, which is extremely expensive. So a supplement here might be helpful, but this helps to decrease the inflammation of the lining of the gut, which is just so important in improving that mucosal barrier integrity and helping with the ability of your gut to actually absorb nutrition. Increasing polyphenols. So these are plant-based chemicals that really do help also to feed the good gut bacteria and encourage the growth of the microbiome. So polyphenols are found in all plant foods, but particularly in your spices. So things like ginger and turmeric, and then also in dark chocolate and teas, red wine. So moderate intake of red wine has actually been shown to help increase the growth of good gut bacteria, but no more than 2 units a day, and give your liver a break in between is important. Another big one, decreasing intake of artificial sweeteners. So a lot of social media influencers are mad about artificial sweeteners at the moment, and they add sticks of canderel and all sorts of things into their oats. Not necessary. And there really is research showing here that the artificial sweeteners can disrupt that balance of gut microbiome and good and bad bacteria. Alcohol, excess caffeine are also mucosal irritants. They're going to really bug the gut lining when consumed in excess. And then what I wanted to talk about is the difference between pre and probiotics. So this is a question I get asked a lot, and a lot of people don't understand it. So prebiotics are foods that help to increase the reproduction and the growth of the good gut bacteria in your system. So prebiotic foods include artichokes, bananas, asparagus, oats, apples, onion, garlic. So these prebiotic foods contain special types of fibers that is basically like fertilizer for your rainforest, fertilizer for your good gut microbiome, but organic fertilizer. And then probiotic rich foods, these actually contain live microbes. They contain the bacteria that's going to help to recolonize your gut. So yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented foods are helpful there. Resistant starch as well. So if you cook potatoes, cool them and reheat them, they increase their quantity or their content of resistant starch, which helps also to feed our gut microbes and increases the production of something called short chain fatty acids. And short chain fatty acids are anti-inflammatory for your entire body. So they help to circulate around your system and decrease inflammation. And then I think it's important, if you do suspect you have intolerances, find out those, but work with somebody who knows the gut, because a lot of these diets that are circulating on the internet can be really dangerous if they're not followed with supervision and if they're not really monitored. And then I want to finish off just with supplements and superfoods. So I get asked this all the time. What supplements can I take? What should I be taking? Again, I just want to put a disclaimer here. There's no one size fits all approach in terms of supplements. Sometimes probiotics can be wonderful for some people, but in somebody with SIBO, it can cause the symptoms to flare up like mad. So just really be mindful. And I always recommend getting health advice first before taking anything. So probiotics, there's loads on the market, but what you're wanting to look for is minimum 9 strains. So 9 strain means 9 different types of bacterial species in the capsule. And we're aiming for a serving of a minimum of 4 billion CFUs, colony forming units per serving. Okay, so minimum 4 billion, minimum 9 strain. Oftentimes probiotics that are kept in the fridge are the bacteria is live, and then digestive enzymes can be really, really helpful too. So digestive enzymes are naturally produced in our body, and they help our body to break down food. So lipase, for example, is a digestive enzyme, and that specifically breaks down fat in food. Lactase breaks down lactose in milk. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates. Protease breaks down protein. And then cellulase breaks down those hard linings of lettuce and chickpeas and lentils and things like that. So if you have been to a doctor, been to a dietitian, you've checked that there's nothing medical going on, but you're still struggling with a little bit of uncomfortable tummy symptoms, or you're a bit bloated, try a digestive enzyme before you start eating. It can help just speed up the breakdown of the food. And then what I find really, really amazing about nature and food is that some of our foods naturally contain these digestive enzymes. So papaya, pineapple, kiwi, avo, yogurt are rich in these enzymes, and eating them frequently helps your body to break down other food. And then herbs, spices, and tonics. So ginger, peppermint leaf extract, licorice, aloe, and curcumin, which is basically turmeric, really are very soothing and very calming to the gut lining. Omega-3s, as I've mentioned, and then L-glutamine is one of my favorites because L-glutamine is an amino acid, and this is the food for your enterocytes. So your enterocytes are the cells that line your gut, and they feed off of L-glutamine. And when you give them L-glutamine, and L-glutamine is found in food, obviously it's a protein, but sometimes we need it at more concentrated doses. And L-glutamine helps to keep the mucosal integrity and the gut barrier function really nice and strong. So if you've got a runny tummy, L-glutamine is helpful. And then fiber-rich foods, so psyllium husk or chia seeds, flax seeds, this really helps to quickly increase fiber intake. Drink enough water with this, please, please. But it does help if you're struggling with a bit of a lazy tummy. Okay, and then I'm going to close off with mindful eating. So many digestive complaints can be solved and improved by this. Remember, your digestion starts in your mouth. If you are gulping down your food and inhaling your food and not breathing during your meals and not chewing your food properly, how do you think your poor tummy is going to cope with that? It's not, okay? It's a domino effect all the way down. Not chewing your food properly, the saliva, which contains digestive enzymes, isn't going to have that opportunity to break down the food. And so the process goes on, and then your poor colon and bacteria have to deal with the brunt of that. So just be aware of that. We should be chewing our food to like purity baby food consistency, mushy, 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 applesauce consistency. Try to avoid late night snacking before bed. You don't want to eat a big snack or a big meal and then go lie down. That can really increase the risk of heartburn and acid reflux. Try not to have distractions while eating. Try to be fully present and aware and mindful with eating. And then really, really importantly is to calm the nervous system down before eating. So Megs is going to elaborate onto this, and I'm so excited that she is talking about this, but it's just so important. So that's where I'll end. I won't give away anything more. I hope that was helpful, everyone.
Don't go away. Don't go away. First of all,
yes.
This was one of my most fascinating ones you've done. I really, really enjoyed this. I don't know why, but I just, there's a couple of things
because
that
you talk about your gut every single day of your life.
That's true. But I mean,
you talk about it all
you know what, that thing that she said, that CFU thing that she said,
colony
I think that is the most beautiful acronym that's in medical and dietetics today. Colony forming unit. That feels like something that happens on the moon and Mars.
Sounds
soon.
like a UFO, but different.
I love it. I just love it. The colony forming unit. So Carly, I'm going to ping you just with a couple and just keep them real concise, okay? Because I want to get to it now. But this question comes up a lot. Like, how much protein should we be getting? Because in the beginning, you said in one of the slides, you said, well, switch over to kind of more the plant-based aspects and minimize on the proteins that you get from animals, etc. And one of the examples I always give to people, and I'll never forget, I don't know if it was Lisa that's told me this, but it's kind of eat the protein that your protein eats. Like it's like, how did a cow get those lean, big muscles? Like, and one stat that's quite incredible, the most powerful animal in the world, pound for pound, is a silverback gorilla. Right? If you take a look how lean it is, look how muscular it is, and then you could take a look at what it eats all day. It's plants. So we always have this misconception that we need like mounds of meat to get to our protein if we take it out. I'll be honest with you, I have not eaten an animal protein now for like, I don't know, how many years are you going on it?
14 years.
14 years. I think I'm at 10 or 11 years. So we don't eat any animals. You don't need this notion. So Carly, just quick one. How much protein do you need in a day?
Yeah. So firstly, look at you two, look at your muscle mass, look at Lisa's muscle mass. If anyone wants to argue with that, then they can chat to you. Okay, so it did.
Look at a lot of the athletes that are starting to come out. They have huge, big social media following. They are world champions. And then you go deeper and they're vegan. And you're like, how do you look like that and you're vegan? But it's great because it's starting to wave the flag that you don't necessarily have to be vegan, but it is possible to have a really good physique and to have lots of lean muscle tissue without consuming so much animal protein all the time.
Yeah.
Possible, you have to be careful though. You need to see a dietitian and you need to make sure that you're getting all your yeah, your macros sorted, and you know what I mean. You need to be very specific about it, and all of them, I know they all have dietitians, you know, on hand, but it's just I love the fact that there's so many of them coming out saying, hey, I don't eat meat. Next one, I don't eat meat. Hey, I don't eat meat. Whereas, you know, a decade ago, they wouldn't, but they would never come out and say it, because everyone would frown upon them. Like, what kind of athlete are you? so
go, Carly. Just give us like a couple seconds.
So I think the misconception there is that when we think protein, we only think animals, and it's not true. We have to remember that nuts, seeds, chickpeas, lentils, butter beans, whole grains, all of these foods contain beautiful sources of protein too. So don't just think animal foods when you think about protein. And the reason why I say more plants, less meat, I'm not saying you have to go vegan. I'm really not. I'm just saying think about your quantities on your plate, because South Africans typically have a huge amount of steak on their plate, or huge amount of meat, and very little veggies, very little plants. So just swapping that around, just looking at the portion sizes, and it can be a little bit more flexitarian. And the reason why is because meat actually produces more toxic chemicals and toxic byproducts in your gut, which can disrupt the gut microbiome, which can increase systemic inflammation in the body. So you don't have to cut it out, but just be mindful. In terms of protein requirements, I don't see anyone calculating their protein down to a T, but if you want to look at it, you can look at it between 1 to 1.5 grams of dietary protein per kilogram body weight, if you want to get really scientific. But generally, my advice is to include a protein-rich food in every meal. So that could be yogurt, that could be eggs, that could be chickpeas, that could be nuts and seeds. So just including some sort of protein is honestly enough. We don't need as much as we think we do.
Okay, so one of the questions that comes up, doctor or dietitian, if I think I've got issues, where do I go? I'm going to answer this quickly. I think there's an offering that Carly's made available on our e-store that I think is one of our most popular offerings. I'm going to hit send right now in the chat. That is a pre-consult with Carly. That's 15 to 20 minutes. And you can ask your most basic questions here. Because I can see some of the questions coming up about, you know, gallbladder removed. What do I do? IBS.
I know a lot, yeah.
I do. I think these are so specific. And obviously, we don't want to give you medical advice that's general on this, because there are risks associated with that. But I just take a look at that pre-consult with Carly. It's very affordable, it's like $380 or something. And you get Carly for 15, 20 minutes, and she'll unpack all of this. Key thing also that Carly said, she slipped it out and she just did it and she went over it. And that is, there's a company in South Africa, and I'm going to say that because we don't compete with them, we're not in the space. But there's
I don't know if you can say it.
Okay, I won't. But they are. Okay, I won't say it then. Okay, but there's a company in South Africa that does microbiome testing, and they claim to be very scientific, etc. I just want you all just to hold on a little bit. DNA analysis, and Carly and the team there are working on an offering that is DNA genetics based. And what I like about that, it is based upon your genetic makeup. This is what your microbiome looks like, and these are the influences on your microbiome. That's going to be an incredible test. That's a month to 2 months away, maybe a little bit more, but let's just say in the next 2 to 3 months, we're going to have a test. We'll make it available on our e-store. And the nice thing about it, we're not just going to make it available. It will come with the bundle with Carly, the pre-consult, the post-consultation, and all the benefits in terms of medical aid deductions and all of that. But that's a test. That's going to be the one, because all the tests that's out there today take a sample of your fecal matter. And the problem with that is it's like a blood test. You're like making a change in your lifestyle relative to a blood test. Everyone talks about blood tests, but your blood today is very different from what it is tomorrow. So too is your fecal matter relative to your intake of various foods. So just wait for this test. This is the definitive one. I'm very, very excited about this test.
So Carly, if one of our clients has already done, say, DNA health and diet, and now they want to do the gut one, could they do that as that add-on, that upgrade add-on?
So unfortunately, the gut testing is going to be done in a different lab. So it's a different structure, but we'll chat about the logistics when we get there. I think just to elaborate quickly on where to start, if you book a pre-consult with me, and if I feel like your issues are beyond my ability to help you, I have wonderful gastroenterologists who I work with, and I can refer you if necessary. So I'm very happy to point you in the right direction if I feel medical intervention is necessary, if it's something that diet can't fix. But yeah, you're welcome to reach out and I can see if we can help you.
Okay, cool, Carly. So yeah, just this is like one of those snaps. I've answer quick ones. Okay, that answers the medical doctor versus dietitian. Go to Carly pre-consult. A candida sufferer and also has inflammation on a section of the colon, how to treat it. I think that's again one of those pre-consult ones, eh?
No, I wouldn't even be able to answer in a pre-consult, Steph. I'd need to literally do a full-on assessment of that patient and figure it out.
Okay. Another one that I think is quite topical is deworming. Yes or no, good, bad? What's your quick snapshot thought?
Ooh, that's not really food related. I think I would have to look at the individual case. Are you exposed? Do you have symptoms? Is it, yeah, it's something that would need to be looked at on an individual basis. And you know, do you have pets? What pets? Do they have worms? Have they been dewormed? So there's a lot of questions there to look into. Also,
like once you go through that, like what impact does that have on your microbiome? How do you repair that? I think you've shared some of that. One of the things that came out is if your microbiome changes all the time, will this DNA test actually be relative? Yes, it will be, because genetically, if you understand yourself through a genetic lens, that's the perpetual lens, that's the lens that never changes, then you can establish what are the influencing factors relative to your microbiome. It's not going to tell you what your microbiome is based upon your genetics. It's going to tell you kind of how your body's constituted relative to your microbiome through a genetic test. So that's one. Decaf coffee, thoughts on that quickly? I know that Lisa doesn't like it because she says the process of them taking the caffeine out is very chemical induced stuff. So just your quick.
It's fancy and they're using ozone and things like that, which becomes very expensive.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah. I think if patients are really, really dependent and addicted to the taste of coffee and their tummy's really struggling, I would prefer decaf because it's less irritating to the lining of the gut. It's not perfect. I'd prefer, in an ideal world, ginger tea. But if that's not going to cut it and they really need that taste, then moderate, like 1 cup of decaf a day maximum, is better than like lots and lots of actual caffeine, because it does really aggravate the lining of the gut.
Okay, cool. Sharon just asked, I saw in the chat now, will the cleanse affect your microbiome, and is it good for your microbiome, etc.? I'm going to give my 2 cents because you guys can go into depth on it. I think a cleanse is good, especially something like the Eliminate. So go take a look, see if you can put the Eliminate link into the chat. The Eliminate program takes away processed foods, and it takes away all, what do you call it, stimulants, and it also takes away all the animal products.
Caffeine, alcohol, sugar. Dairy, animal products, processed food, sodium. I mean, it's all the stuff that Carly's spoken about, and you can eat as much of the good stuff as you want to. So it's all your nuts and your seeds and your rice and your ever and your fruits and your vegetables and legumes and all the things that we've spoken about now, artichokes, bananas, asparagus, oats, all in Eliminate. But what's beautiful about it, it's a day-by-day guide with shopping lists and recipes, and the recipes are delicious.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Because a lot of people don't want to just eat this boring salad. They want to eat a wholesome soup or a veggie biryani or a lovely curry. And that's what we've done with the Eliminators. So we've taken all God's given nature foods from a tree and not from a factory, and we've made them incredibly delicious, as opposed to just like, oh gosh, I can't live like this for 10 days, you know? How boring.
Eliminate is amazing. I think, Steph, they're saying a cleanse is a good idea. It really depends on what cleanse. Like Eliminate, I can fully stand behind. I think it's the most beautiful program, and it does encompass all of these guidelines here. So it's a really practical tool. But a cleanse that you Google or a cleanse that you just find from whoever it is, not necessarily a good idea. So just know where you're getting your cleanse from.
So just by the way, in terms of doing the Eliminate, Roxy's put it up there. You can do it completely by yourself or online. Also, pre-consult with Carly, it's not in person. You can do a pre-consult with Carly online. In fact, she does it online. So yeah, the fast thing comes up a lot. Look, we can be here all night. We're going to answer like 1,000 of these questions, but I want to get to
on the Eliminate side of things. So we also came up with a brand new recipe book. It was I think it was about 1.5 years ago, because the Eliminate's about 14 years old. That's how long I've been doing the Eliminate with clients, many years ago. And yeah, so why is it called Eliminate? Because there's 8 different things that you eliminate out of your diet all at the same time. But you can eat as much of the good foods as you want to, and then by the process of elimination, you bring one food back at a time, and then you kind of see how your body reacts to that food. So and this was way before DNA. Now we can shortcut it and we can do the DNA test, because that will tell you if you are gluten intolerant, if you're lactose intolerant, how your body responds to alcohol and caffeine and all these things. So we don't have to do the whole let's reintroduce it all back in one at a time. If you do the DNA test, you see, that's what's so amazing. So the Lemonade is just, so what I find with it is that I can tell you right now what you should and shouldn't eat, like Carly just did. We can even do your DNA, and there's the science, okay? Here is what you should not eat for your DNA. So you couldn't get more factual or specific to your body, right? But until you feel it for yourself, you may never believe us, or it may never stick for the rest of your life. So once you cut out all the junk in your trunk, you feel completely rotten for a few days. Most people are nauseous. They get like pimply on their arms as the sort of acid bumps come out. They get headaches, withdrawals, lack of energy. They can even vomit. I mean, I remember when Steph did Eliminate the last time, and he's never had a cup of coffee or tea, regular tea since.
And more.
3 days he was in bed with headaches and wanting to throw up the whole time. Anyway, so and he
and
was
just,
clean.
let me just say something. When I took coffee out, that was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I did that. When I took coffee out, it was the most scary thing ever that happened to me, outside of COVID pneumonia, but that was very scary. And I do crave coffee. I walk into a coffee shop because I used to be a coffee snob, and I used to get the best coffee, most expensive coffee. The reason I don't take it anymore is because I'm too scared of putting it back into my body, because when I took it out, my body's reaction to it was so violent. And I just, it scared me just way too much, and I stopped it. And that's what the Eliminate does. And so we do Eliminate kind of twice a year. If you'd ask us what Lisa and I do, she gets it on it, and we prep the fridge and we do everything. And it's amazing.
It's easy peasy pie. But okay, so what we do is like, okay, we take out all the different foods and ingredients, and for the first couple of days you don't feel great, but you start to turn the corner and you start feeling actually quite amazing after 5 days, and everything actually starts to improve. The whites of your eyes, the sort of black rings start lifting, you don't feel so bloated, the swelling in your hands come down, maybe you lose a little bit of weight, you just don't feel like you've got so much water retention, the headaches disappear. I mean, so many things can change in a very short period of time once you get through the worst. And then by day 8, 9, and 10, you're feeling like you've never felt before. Like that whole saying, nothing feels as good as feeling good feels. And that feeling is really quite addictive. And our clients get to the end of that 10 days and they say, I don't want to put the caffeine back in. I actually don't want to put the gluten back in. I'm so terrified. I feel so good. In fact, I've never felt this good in my life. Can I keep going like this for a little longer? And be like, yes, do that as long as you want to, there's no harm in it. But yeah, so the Lemonade is awesome. So many of our clients have done it so many times over now. That's why we did another recipe book. So you'll see on the e-store, it says there Eliminate 2.0, and that one is just a recipe book. Okay, so it's another 30 recipes for the clients that adore Eliminate. They do it twice a year, every year, and now they got a bit bored of the recipes. Then we gave them another 30 recipes to start playing around with, which was very welcome. So yeah.
I'll put the link in there for the Lemonade 2.0. So look, amazing. Thank you, Carly, as usual.
Can I talk for 5 minutes?
You want to talk for 5 minutes?
Yeah, well, I just quickly want to talk.
Okay, cool. Because I think, look, I just know there's a special guest coming, Megan.
Yes.
She is really,
she's going to calm us all down.
I know.
I'm excited when I now she must calm us all down.
Okay, just before you go, I want Roxy to do the following. Roxy, if you can, just in the chat, can you paste in all the Biogen links? That's where all their probiotics are and their supplementation, etc. And like I said, there's a code that you can put in on their e-store. On the Biogen e-store, and you can get discounts on the entire prebiotic range. And just by the way, we are consumers of their products. So yeah, every day.
In fact, there's a little box next to my thing, that probiotic, if you want to get that.
Okay,
so let me explain. 14 years ago, I was a meat eater. I used to run a lot. I used to do a lot of weight training. I was always doing land-based exercise, so I wasn't rebounding like I do today. I was eating meat. I was consuming a lot of caffeine, and I was having regular tea in my diet. I wasn't having only rooibos tea like I do now. And I always felt tired. So I had bloatedness after I ate. I had headaches a lot. I felt very sleepy in the afternoons, like I needed some sugar or caffeine, something to pick me up. I felt like I just needed to nap desperately. If I had red meats, then the next day I'd feel very, very sort of like a hot throat, I used to call it a hot belly, like my belly feels hot and busy. It was like a busy belly, but also constipated. My skin definitely wasn't as clear. I mean, you name it, I had it. And I put myself on a challenge of 30 days of no meats. Okay. The last time I ate meat was at one of my closest friends' wedding, lamb on the spit. That was the last time I put meat into my body. The next day I was so ill, not from the booze, from the lamb. Anyway, 30 days later, every single thing that I suffered from, swollen hands and feet, the bloatedness, the headaches, the fatigue, everything had disappeared. So fast forward 14 years later, and here I am, having not eaten one bite, not even one bite of meat since. And I cannot tell you how my body's changed, my skin, my actual physique has changed, my energy levels, my immune system, everything is different now because of doing a few things. So the first thing that I did was cut out meat, no meat at all. Okay, and I never liked fish anyway, so it was like no meat. The second thing that I introduced years ago was rebounding. So rebounding is very good for something called peristalsis. So peristalsis is a natural contraction of the colon that happens all day, every day. It's an involuntary thing, and it massages the colon. It contracts the colon to move the fecal matter down the intestines and then out. Otherwise, what's actually moving it? Because sometimes, well, not sometimes, but you get your transverse and ascending, transverse and descending colon. So when it's going up and across, down, gravity, sure, but when everything's going up and across, what is actually getting it up and across? When you're working against gravity, it's the peristaltic contractions, right? So rebounding is one of those exercises because the nature of the acceleration and deceleration of it, the G-force, is really good at helping people to get their colons moving again. And so that helps with peristalsis. So why does peristalsis stop? So what happens is when you ignore the urge to go to the loo, which most people do on an average day, and it can happen many times in a week to the point where you're not going to the loo for days and days on end. This is common, as I said in the beginning. So what happens is that you have, say, 5 days, 3 days of waste matter that should have been eliminated 3 days ago. Now it's sitting on your colon and it's stretching your colon. Okay, it's making everything sort of impacted and big and large. Now your colon is like an elastic. It stretches, right? So instead of it being nice and taut and the peristalsis is doing its job, you're sitting too much, you're not active enough. And now you've got this colon that, because it's not eliminating twice a day, is stretched, and the muscle of the colon is not doing its work. It's become stretched and lazy. So you look at those two things combined, the fact that peristalsis has been, is no longer working anymore, lack of movement, and the fact that the colon is stretching, and you're just making this constipation factor 1,000,000 times worse every day that you don't go to the loo and every day that you don't move your body. It becomes a real big problem until you need laxatives, colonic hydrotherapy. You need all kinds of interventions to actually get your colon to move. So the key is obviously to get all that fecal matter out as much as possible, so that you are going to need to go on a cleanse. You are going to need to start rebounding. You're going to need to start naturally moving all the gunk out through a process that you would need to follow with guidance. And then making sure that you start moving every day, rebounding every single day, that you start not ignoring those signs and symptoms. You need to retrain the colon walls again, to, believe it or not, to start contracting on their own without the need of using some kind of stimulant. So rebounding really, really helped me. And then things that I take probiotics every day. I take the Biogen one. It's a 9-strain. It's called the Supreme one. And then when I'm traveling, they've actually just introduced something called an acute one, which is got 10 million CFUs, your fancy word, whereas the normal one, 9-strain, has 5 million, which is fine for day to day. It's more than enough, okay? But when you go and you travel and you might have a sip of the bad water when you brush your teeth, you're eating different foods, you're exposed to different bacteria, different viruses, all of that stuff. It's quite good to have something that's a little bit more a little bit stronger. So then I take the Biogen acute one, which has got 10 million CFUs in it. And it's 9-strain, and I take that for like the 10 days that I'm away. Super Scoop is something that I developed 4 years ago, and that has got 1 scoop of superfoods. Super Scoop has 5 grams of fiber in it, 5 grams, which is really, really good. So if you're not able to eat lots and lots of raw fruits and raw veggies, which we need to eat every day, it's a really nice supplement to add, to know that you're getting 5 grams of fiber and you're getting your CFUs, 10 billion CFUs in 1 scoop. So is something I have every day, and my staff does too. And he panics if we're running out, and our cupboard is a scoop of superfood, super scoop every day. Then I really am quite neurotic about consuming fiber. So Carly keeps talking about fiber there, but you can ask that. I often have like just some carrots and cucumber sticks, and I munch on that while I'm working. I have a raw salad every single day of my life. I have fresh fruits every day of my life, vegetables, and I try not to cook any of them. I try and have like a nice big salad because I'm so fixated on the fiber content, the crunch, the raw. And if I don't eat a salad for 2 days, I actually panic. I'm a bit of a raw freak. Not that I want all my food raw at all, because I love cooked stuff, but I constantly thinking to myself, what have I eaten today that's raw, that's fresh, that's crunchy and fibrous? So raw is a big thing. I did my DNA as well, and that changed a lot. I mean, I found out that I was gluten intolerant, so I now stay away from all gluten unless I have a very high quality sourdough bread that my friend makes down the road, or if I'm in a reunion, I will only eat their sourdough because it's the real deal. I'll have pizza that's only made from sourdough starter. So I'm a a sourdough snob. Okay, I do not eat any gluten because I know what it does to my tummy. It just makes me sore and bloated and all of that. So sourdough, don't eat gluten, did my DNA. I never eat late at night. I really, really don't. I find that if I eat late at night, it affects my sleep so badly. Like to eat and then go to sleep. You know, I try and eat and then wait at least 3 hours before I go to bed. I don't have soya products in my diet very much. I found that when I became a vegetarian, I would then revert to soya products as your meat alternatives. And every time I ate soya, I actually had similar symptoms to when I ate meat. I got inflamed, swollen, hot belly. It was way too fake.com and inflammatory for my body. Okay. The eliminate I do twice a year. Then what else? Vegetable juice every single day. Our lovely lady at home makes us a big vegetable juice filled with lots of different veggies and just a small little portion of fruit, like half an apple each. So we use 1 apple and a big colander of veggies that have been cleaned with an ozonator so that we take off the pesticides, the herbicides and things like that, so that there's none of that junk left. And then she juices it for us. And then we add in turmeric and curcumin and garlic and chili, and all those things go into it. You don't really taste it. And then I have a big glass of vegetable juice, that big, every single day of my life, unless I'm traveling. And if I'm traveling, then I'll have 2 super scoops because I'm not getting my daily vegetable juice. Another thing, we eat at the table every night. We sit, we serve, we put our phones away 90% of the time, and we eat our food, and we eat for an hour. We cut and we chew and we converse and we enjoy our food, we celebrate our meal, we connect with each other, we share. And I do not eat in front of the TV. I never eat while I'm standing and flying out the house. I sit and I eat. And that I'm trying to teach, well, I have taught the whole family. And that was thanks to my parents who raised me that way. Where meal times are where we connect, we sit and we enjoy and be grateful for the food that we are given. So that is something I do. And I also eat really slowly. So I went to a specialist many years ago who taught me to drink my food. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, you have to chew a minimum 20, 30 times. You chew and you eat slow. And the first process of digestion is called mastication. And that's masticating in your mouth. Your salivary amylase is where you break down your first, that's where you break things down first in your mouth. And so I chew and I don't just go and I swallow. I chew my food and I'm very present and I take a long time to eat. My family says, are you still not done? I'm still not done. But I just take a very long time to chew and, enjoy my food. So yeah, I mean, those are just some of the things that I've learned over time. The big ones being DNA, the big ones being eating way more plants and no meat anymore. And then all those little things. And I found that it's really helped my gut. I don't have, any gut issues anymore, where I used to suffer badly from all kinds of gut issues and fatigue and headaches and stuff, which all came from gut issues. So I know that it's never too late. And I know with some small changes here and there and everywhere and seeking the right advice, I am testament to somebody that was suffering badly without any sort of medical problem, just day-to-day problems that I think most people have. So I didn't have Crohn's disease, I didn't have IBS, I didn't have any of that. But I know I have bad inflammation from DNA, and I know that I just, I needed to fix my gut. So if you're listening to me and you're thinking, this sounds like me, I don't have Crohn's or anything, but I know there's something wrong with my gut. Just know you can change it and you can feel flipping amazing if you change your gut's habits and your gut biome. Okay, so anyway, that's it from me. I just wanted to make it personal because my gut wasn't always good. And I've been on a gut journey myself for the last decade or so. So yeah, okay, over to Megan.
Hey, Megan, welcome. Look, I'm not going to do a full-blown intro because we're kind of out of time. You set the stage. Thank you for making the time.
Yes.
I'm very excited to hear Cardi speaks very highly of you, and we did some research on you, and you look like one of those fancy folks out there. So also your practice, I know, is very close to us in Bryanston, and that's going to be exciting. So yeah, so Megan, go ahead. This angle on gut health is like, I'm really looking forward to this because this is like a physical aspect relative to gut health, which is quite fascinating. So the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steph and Lisa and Biogen and Carly for having me tonight. It's great to be here, and well done everybody that you're still awake at this time of night and paying attention to something that is health related. So I will try to be not too long. We'll get through it and we'll get into a little practical at the end, which is going to be awesome for you to go straight to sleep afterwards. I'm basically preparing you for a great night's sleep, essentially. So I'm Megan Probler, I'm a biokineticist, and I've also done a yoga and Pilates instructor's course, and I'm also a sports massage therapist. So jack of all trades, essentially, but all of those tools in my toolbox, and first and foremost, biokinetics for sure. As Steph mentioned, I'm in Bryanston at Off Nickel Rehab Center, so not too far from the studio. So just a quick one, what biokinetics is, because a lot of people don't actually know, it's such a long word. It's anything to do with exercise. So we exercise specialists. I personally focus a lot on orthopedic rehabilitation. So that's looking at back pain, neck pain, shoulder injuries, knee injuries. But of course, exercise plays a massive role in chronic disease management. So from type 1 to type 2 diabetes. I myself have type 1 diabetes, so I'm pretty passionate about glucose management, and that's also where my love for nervous system management came into play. Even some cancers, of course, exercise is vital during that journey. I see a lot of elderly patients improving their functionality and quality of life with age, and then of course sports-specific rehab. And then tonight I'm going to be kind of putting my yoga hat on a little bit more. So in 2019, I went over to Goa. This was about a year and a half after I found out about my type 1 diabetes. It was a massive mental knock. And I decided I didn't know what life was going to throw at me. And this was a dream I had. So off I went, and I spent a month at an ashram in India, eating vegetarian, chanting and meditating every day, doing breathwork all day, exercising intensely twice a day. Spent a lot of time in silence, a lot of time journaling, and a lot of time with just introspection, being with myself, and came back feeling definitely like a new person. So it is difficult to keep that Megan alive in Joburg, not an easy place. But for sure, my love is to try and spread a little bit of what I learned over there with my patients and my clients. So I don't teach yoga classes per se, like all week, every week, Tuesdays and Fridays and things like that. I find I need to be quite careful with my energy. And when I'm teaching yoga, I really want to give of myself. So I prefer to keep my yoga energy for events and retreats where there's a theme, where I can actually teach people something, make people feel something very specific. So if you're interested in those, you can follow the Parkmore Pure Kinetics Instagram page. All right, but tonight I'm focusing obviously on the nervous system first and foremost. So I'll be educating you on what the nervous system actually is, and then we'll get into how that affects gut. And then we'll be focusing at the end on breath work, but we'll bring it all together. So the nervous system, in case you're not really sure, this term kind of gets thrown around quite loosely, but essentially it's the network of nerves between our brain, our spinal cord that's housed in our spinal column, and then all of the peripheral nerves that exit off of this spinal cord. And these nerves then travel to all of our muscles, joints, to our organs, of course, our intestine, our stomach, and all over the body, skin, for example. And this nervous system is really our computer, okay? And it controls all the other nervous systems, all the other systems in the body. For example, your circulatory system, that's like your blood pressure, your endocrine system, so your hormones, your digestive system, of course, which is what we're chatting about tonight, and respiratory system, on and on and on. It's all really, all of the messages stem from the nervous system, stem from your computer, your brain. So this all acts as a highway of information. So there's just constant information and electrical pulses being passed to and from down these little pathways and tributaries of nerves. And so mindful movement, I like to say, you know, like yoga and Pilates, rebounding for sure. Mindful movement where you have to be present, you have to be in your body. Where is my left foot? Am I flexing? Am I pointing? Is my core active? What is my posture doing? Mindful movement like that lights up our nervous system like a Christmas tree. And it just stimulates us in a really healthy way. So the nervous system is the umbrella term. And then within the nervous system, we get the autonomic nervous system. And within that, we get the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And this is what we're really going to be focusing on tonight. So I'm sure you've heard of the sympathetic nervous system. This is when we go into fight or flight, or sometimes freeze, actually. So the sympathetic nervous system has its role to play in acute situations. So you're walking along at night and you feel something tickle your foot and you jump and you shout, or something like, you know, quick happens like that. That is a fight or flight. Your body reacts. There is a rush of cortisol through your body, and you go, maybe you run away really quickly. So you flight, you flee the situation and you protect yourself. And different to that, we also get a chronic sympathetic stimulation in the nervous system. So this occurs when we are experiencing high levels of stress for days and days and weeks forever, for a really long time. And that's not our acute amount of cortisol. That's where cortisol rises, it stays up and up and up. And then the health effects of that are really poor. So that's where we're going to kind of focus on. And moving from that, conversely, from that ugly situation where you're always stressed or have this like background anxiety going on, conversely, we want to look at the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is our rest and digest nervous system. So, you know, you've just eaten a big happy lunch on a Sunday afternoon, you're lying on the couch, maybe you're watching a little bit of Formula One or whatever you're doing. Everything is calm, you're chilled, your body is digesting, there is no high levels of cortisol, your body is doing what it's supposed to do. So just to show you a little bit about the two different nervous systems, and specific to gut health and digestion. So if we look first to the right here, we can see that when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, so in that fight or flight or freeze, we get an inhibition of the activity of the stomach, gallbladder, and intestines. And so they're not, as Lisa mentioned, peristalsis, that's not happening. Digestion is lowered, and your body's ability to absorb food and go to the loo and everything is reduced. And so when we're looking at parasympathetic nervous system activation, which is what we'll focus on, this is a stimulation of our beautiful digestion of the stomach, the gallbladder, and intestines. And the food is, you know, moving through the system as it was designed to. So parasympathetic nervous system activation, it's such a mouthful, but, you know, when we're feeling calm, when we're feeling centered and grounded, that's promoting correct digestion and all of the effects that come from that, absorption, etc. We get a slowing of our heart and breathing rates, and we also get a lowering of our blood pressure. So how does this happen? So it's through the vagus nerve link, and maybe everybody's heard of this pathway. So it's a pathway that travels from your brain all the way down into your stomach and then into your gut. It actually goes into a couple of other areas just not shown here. And then the nerve also travels back up into your brain. So it is a complete closed loop system. And this is this brain-gut connection that people speak of. It's the vagus nerve. Essentially, that's the highway for that brain-gut connection. So this vagus nerve is stimulated when we are in parasympathetic nervous system activation. So when we are in the opposite, when we are in high sympathetic nervous system stimulation, so we're in either acute stress, where we might get a knot in our stomach, or something's happened, or you got a stressful email and all of a sudden your tummy's cramping and you need to run to the loo. So that could be an acute stress, or you could get a chronic sympathetic nervous system activation where you are just living at a high level of stress for weeks and weeks and months on end. Both of those situations will cause poor vagal tone. So essentially your vagus nerve kind of becomes dumb or not very connected, not very alert. And that's what can cause things like constipation, upset sore stomach, IBS-like symptoms, and malabsorption of nutrients. So that sounds quite puffy, but let's focus on the positive. Like, how can we actually improve this? How can we improve our vagal tone and therefore our gut health? So something that's super popular at the moment, I'm sure you guys have seen the Wim Hof technique, cold water immersion, really good for vagal tone. Don't think I'd be doing it, especially in Joburg winter, but it does work. Hugging, humming, singing, and gargling is fantastic for your vagus nerve, because of its because the vagus nerve travels through the throat. So those sort of vibrations really stimulate the vagus nerve in your neck. Meditation obviously brings us to parasympathetic nervous system activation. Massages, obviously we know those are calming. Probiotics, fiber actually help with vagal tone, as Carly mentioned. And then what we're focusing on is how we can manipulate our breath to improve our vagal tone. All right, so there are many ways you can change your breath, look at breath, pranayama, as we call it in yoga, but I'm going to simplify it tonight and just focus on 3 practical ways that you can practice this on your own. So number 1 is just to breathe more slowly. So instead of, when we are stressed, we take short, sharp, shallow breaths, we tend to breathe up into our shoulders and everything's kind of intense. So if you were just to literally slow your breath rate down, aiming for about 6 breaths per minute, so that's about an inhale every 5 seconds, exhale every 5 seconds. Then number 2, we want to breathe more deeply. So we want to breathe down into our belly, and half of the reason for that is to connect down into vagal nerve, into gut. It also helps us to connect to diaphragm better, which all links back to parasympathetic nervous system activation. So we want to be able to expand our abdomen and breathe into our rib cage. A lot of us don't have that ability if we're not regular yogis or, conscious of our breath, really, like just breathe. But actually, it is a skill that needs to be honed. And if you can hone the skill, you can really impact your nervous system state, your mental state, and your gut health. And then the final one is to manipulate your breath by exhaling longer than you inhale. So if you just make the inhale for about 4 seconds and the exhale for about 6 seconds, we do get a natural activation of parasympathetic nervous system. All right, so we are going to give this a bash now, so I can get you ready for bed. So I'm just going to give you some options here. These are obviously totally up to you. My favorite option, particularly to calm down gut, particularly is this butterfly pose on your back, Supta Baddha Konasana. It can feel a little intense on the hips, so do it if you like to. And then legs up the wall, Viparita Karani. This is a beautiful one for nervous system, for really down regulating that sympathetic nervous system and just grounding yourself. It's also fabulous for your circulatory system. And then supported child's pose. Oh, what a beautiful space and position to feel safe and calm in. So you're welcome, if you like, to take any of these positions. Otherwise, just as you are, seated is absolutely perfect, or lying in bed, or however you are. So I'm just going to invite you to spend about the next 10, 15 seconds getting really comfortable. And that's really important. We don't want anything bugging us. We don't want to feel any tension in the body. So super comfy wherever you are, and then you can just come to close your eyes. And if closing your eyes tonight feels at all confronting, then you're welcome just to soften the gaze. And before we even get into manipulating the breath to override or kind of control our nervous system, just start by just becoming aware of how your breath is right now without any change. Just follow your breath in and out of the tip of your nose. Now slowly start to take slightly longer sips of air. Not forcing, just slightly lengthening that inhale, maybe a little pause at the top. And then a juicy, surrendering exhale. Just continue like that for another 3 rounds. Slightly slower breaths. And whenever you've completed that 3rd breath, just return to your regular breath. And just after a couple of slower breaths, notice how your inner state feels. What is your heart rate doing? Do you feel a little calmer, perhaps? And then we'll move on to number 2. Number 2 is where we really focus on the direction of the breath. So draw attention once again to the tip of your nose. Breathe in through the tip of the nose. Follow the air down the back of the throat, past the chest, all the way down into your belly. Expand your belly. Exhale from your belly up, past your ribs and chest, past your throat and out the tip of your nose. Inhale, nose, throat, ribs, belly. Exhale, belly, ribs, throat, nose. Continue like that in your own time. Really exploring the volume of your lungs. When was the last time you breathed into the back of your lungs? Can you access the depths of your lungs? Just complete one more round in your own time, unhurriedly. And then again, just returning to your regular breath and taking a moment to observe. Observe your nervous system state. How does your belly feel right now? And then lastly, manipulating the breath so that the exhale is longer than the inhale. So let's start by emptying our lungs completely. And then inhale for 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Continue in your own time. And just completing the round that you're on without any rush. And whenever you're done, just gently begin to blink your eyes open. And again, just observe your space. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you feel calm and centered, and I hope your digestion feels wonderful and that you'll have a fabulous night's sleep. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Megan, what a way to end. You know, have 120 odd people
Actually,
breathing like that. Just for the way,
You're
Lisa,
so
I had to she was on the couch in that flat position.
It was so marvelous. Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate your time today. And,
I think we all need to learn how to breathe a bit better. I think we need to take the time, right? Maybe especially, I mean, would you do this in a stressful situation when you find yourself, oh my gosh, I'm not reacting well, go sit somewhere quiet for 2 minutes and just regulate your breath, come back calmer, as well as at night when you know that this is a really good time because you're feeling a bit stressed out. I know if anyone's like me, I struggle to just, wind down, and I feel like, just my A-type personality, my brain's going crazy. Sometimes it's really hard to fall asleep. So I think something like this would be really fantastic to just bring that heart rate down and to relax a little bit more so that you can fall asleep.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great one to practice in bed. And if you've been having a little bit of digestive issues, just placing your hands gently on your tummy, bringing awareness to your tummy, and doing some deep belly breathing can be really beautiful for that. So any hands on tummy. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, even if you are having a bit of an acute episode and you're on the loose,